Hello, John O'Flaherty, the B3 burner, and what I have for you today is Hammond organ drawbars, the bread and butter of the Hammond organ player, decoded and demystified, coming up. On simplest terms, we can think of them from left to right as volume attenuators, kind of like an equalizer on a stereo. Let's compare an equalizer to drawbars and see where the differences lie, because they're only similar to an extent, and then any similarities end pretty quickly after that. In an equalizer, you are adjusting volume relative to frequency. An equalizer addresses a range of frequencies. This is 1000 hertz or 1K. It's not exactly like when you bring up 1000 hertz, the knob or the slider to max, that 999 and 1001 are omitted and are filtered out. The frequencies around it are also affected. What I want you to get out of the equalizer is that it is a function of frequency and volume, in which case our y-axis would be the volume controls for each frequency, and the x-axis is a continuum of frequency from low on the left to high on the right. The lowest ones are your bass, the middle or the mid-range, and these are your highs. And you can accentuate different frequency ranges by doing that. However, that's just a really down and dirty explanation as to what they are, because they're so much more specific than that. These are specific tones or harmonics, whereas an equalizer just gets a general gist of frequency. Now, let's go ahead and look at Hammond organ drawbars and see that any and all similarities end after that. The first difference is that on drawbars, as they get pushed up, or in this case in, the volume goes down, and when you pull them out, the volume goes up. All the way in is 0 and all the way out is 8, and then you have your volume gradations in between. That's the opposite of this, where pushing it up or away from you makes it louder instead of quieter. The other thing is, unlike the equalizer where I said neighboring frequencies on either side get affected as well, on drawbars it's very specific. If your 8 foot is in the key of C, literally only that note is going to sound. If you have only middle C pushed down, it's not like C sharp or B natural are going to sound also. This is very specific to harmonics. So let's have a look at it. We see that they're numbered by footages. As the number of feet go down, the frequency goes up. An equalizer is a function of frequency. The lower the number, the lower the frequency, the lower the pitch. The higher the number, the higher the frequency, the higher the pitch. Drawbars are the opposite. The higher the footage number, the lower sounding the pipe is. Long pipes make lower sounds, short pipes, like this 1 foot pipe, makes a higher sound. So as you break these in half, you double the frequency or raise the octave. So 8 foot is an octave above 16 feet, 4 feet is an octave above 8 feet, 2 an octave above 4, 1 an octave above 2. If you want to compare it to frequency, we could say if we're pulling out the A above middle C with the 8 foot drawbar, which is literally 440 hertz concert pitch, concert A, half the footage would be double the frequency. It's an octave up, the next A an octave above A440 would be A880. Next thing I want to bring to your attention is, notice these are the only two that are brown. This is gray, colored gray, but it's supposed to be white. And these are dark gray, but they're supposed to be black. I want you to notice something. Maybe you already seen it. The second and the third drawbar look like they're out of order. Why does it go up from 16 feet to 5 1/3, and then back down to 8 feet. If we use our equalizer, notice that 32, 64, 125, 250, 500, so on and so forth, it's a straight ascension without any deviation or exceptions to the rule. This one, you would think the 8 is next to the 16 and the 5 1/3 should be between the 8 and the 4. Well, there's a reason they do that, and I'm going to briefly explain it now. They discovered back in the pipe organ days, back when you had real air pushing through real pipes, they learned that if you combined a 16-foot harmonic or pipe with a 5 1/3, it would create a resultant frequency of 22 feet or thereabouts. It was one of those, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and so they found that they could save space by combining a 16-foot and a 5 1/3 foot pipe to create a resultant, as opposed to having to make room for a 22-foot pipe. And you're not going to hear a resultant frequency that low through a speaker because the fidelity isn't enough to reproduce that sound. But if you're pushing real air through real pipes in a church or a cathedral, you will hear it, or more accurately, you will probably feel it. And so now that we understand the basic function, all the way in is 0 and all the way out is 8, and then you have your volume gradations in between, you can carve any sounds you want, various combinations that you can create. And so now that we've looked at a drawbar diagram, let us look at my spreadsheet, and we've already kind of familiarized ourselves. The order of the drawbars from left to right, 1 through 9. The colors I've already addressed, the 2 brown with the footage that appears to be out of order because of the resultant frequency. The third drawbar from the left is the first white one, and I've made the font red to indicate that this is the fundamental frequency, also known as the principal, and the tonic or root, it's the first scale degree. It is the only bar that if you pull it out, you're actually going to get the real middle C when you hit middle C. Everything else is either a fifth or an octave above or below. Well, there's no fifths below, but there's an octave below and a fifth above. The stop footages, the even harmonics are the full numbers, right? The integers. The mixed fractions are your complex tones that are perfect fifths. In the case of 1 3/5, that's actually 2 octaves and a major third. That's a major third, meaning you press middle C, you're going to get an E natural, 2 octaves above. I'll go to the multiplying factor here. If you divide 8 by any one of these numbers, you'll get these footages. 8 divided by 4 is 2. 8 divided by 5 is 1.6, or converted to a fraction, 1 3/5. So that's where they get those footage markers from the math that's created when you actually count your harmonics. These stops have names that date back to pipe organ speak. Probably a lot of these are German or French. An octave below is the bourdon. The fifth above is the quint. The principal is the fundamental, the main one. An octave above is called an octave, imagine that. The nasard or nasard, it would be the an octave and a fifth above. The block float, O with double dots over it, and I doubt I'm pronouncing that correctly, but that'd be 2 octaves above. The tierce is the 2 octaves in the major third above. That's the 7th drawbar from the left, and probably the most unique one of all, because other than the 7th drawbar, everything else is either a fifth or a root. The eighth drawbar is called the Larigot. I assume the T is silent, and that's 2 octaves and a fifth above. And then finally the Sifflot would be 3 octaves above. Our harmonics are sub-fundamental, sub-third fundamental, and then notice that there's no coincidence. It's no coincidence that the names of the harmonics match the multiplying factor. Scale degree. The tonic is the first scale degree, or what we would call Do. The second bar is a fifth above the first, so we would say that's the 5th scale degree. There's no such thing in music theory as a negative scale degree, but for sake of simplicity, we'll call an octave below -8th. Don't worry so much about that. Scale degrees is not the best way to think of drawbar placement. And that's basically it. That's sort of the very detailed explanation as to how these work out. And next, we're going to have a look at the actual drawbars in practice. And then we'll take a closer look at the bars as they apply. Listen to the sound of each one. See how they sound alone and then together. Now that we have the technical explanation of drawbars out of the way, let's apply it in real life to playing. Okay, so let's take in the drawbars as a whole on the organ. Don't be intimidated by the fact that there are 38. We only used 9 at a time. This first group of 9, there's the 16 foot that I talked about yesterday. There's the 1 foot. That's the extremity of it. These 9 correspond to the upper manual B flat preset on the inverted keys preset. Then the second set of 9, there's a gap so your eyes can tell the difference and they're not just run right next to each other. That would be confusing. So don't worry about that. The second set of 9 corresponds to the upper manual B natural preset, which would be this one over here. See, light change, B flat B. The 2 in the center are 16 and 8 foot drawbars for the pedals. If we had pedals down here, but we don't, so we'll ignore that for a little bit, and instead we direct pedal from the lower, do it that way in lieu of having pedals. Then the next is the presets for the lower manual down here. And once again, we start with A sharp or B flat, only we go to the presets on the bottom. Preset on the bottom, the B flat on the bottom. And we know the green light, or in this case, the green light means the bottom and the red light means the top. So that's B flat and that's B. And then if we were going to control the final set of 9 all the way on the right, we would hit the lower B natural. So that's how that works. It looks intimidating with 38 of them across the console, but at any given moment, we're only operating on 9 at a time. And if you remember my spreadsheet, they systematically repeat themselves. Let's get back over here. 2 browns, 2 whites, a black, a white, 2 blacks, and a white. Same sequence here. Same sequence here. Let me push that in. And same sequence over here. For simplicity's sake, we're going to be concentrating on the upper B preset. This one over here. And just like you saw on the spreadsheet that I showed you, there's your 16-foot drawbar, which is an octave below the 8, 5 1/3, 4, 2 2/3, 2, 1 3/5, 1 1/3, and 1. I'm going to hold down middle C, and we're going to pull out our fundamental. That's the 8-foot bar, and that's the only one with that note pushed down that's actually producing middle C. That's pure middle C. Everything else is either a harmonic of it. This is 8 foot, this is 16 foot. I said the 16 foot is an octave lower, which it is. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. There we go. And in fact, if I hold down middle C with the 8 foot bar in and pull out the 16 foot bar, that's the same as holding down the 8 foot bar and dropping an octave down from middle C. So whether I go like this, they sound the same. So I talked about the harmonic relationship yesterday with the spreadsheet. Now let's actually see it in action. Holding down middle C, there's your fundamental. Then below that fundamental, an octave is 16 feet, double 8 is 16, octave lower. So we'll count down. Do, ti, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do. Da, 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 da. And then the opposite is true if I count up. Do, re, mi, fa, sol. Remember I told you the 5 and the third is the one odd harmonic that is higher even though it's to the left. 8 foot out, do, re, mi, fa, sol. Sol on the C, do, sol, 1, 5, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, do, re, mi, fa, sol. Yep. Sorry about that. I'm gonna have to come down an octave. My voice cannot extend the range of a Hammond organ. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, do, re, mi, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And that's it. That's the rest of it. Doing something interesting and clever with drawbars. Let's start off by showing you an example with just the 8 foot harmonic pulled out, playing the song Taps. Okay, that's just playing it on the keyboard. Now let's do the same thing, but with the drawbars. And we'll start on the 2 2/3. Now, you go and pull them all out. I hold down one note, but I'm actually getting 9 separate tones. Here comes the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th. But the funny thing is your ears don't hear it as 9 separate tones, do they? Once you start playing, it just hears it as a combination of harmonics that make up a C. You're not thinking about the fact that layered on top of each of those notes I just played were 9 separate subcomponents, but they were there. What if we did the opposite? What if we only pulled out one but I started laying down 9 notes at the same time, spread out all the way to the end of the keyboard. Okay, I hope this works out well. If it does, I'm a genius, and if not, I'm the biggest idiot that ever walked the face of the earth. So let's hope for the former. Folded in front of me is 9 sheets of paper, each one representing one of the 9 drawbars. To better visually appreciate where those 9 drawbars control their harmonics on the organ relative to middle C, we know that if we hold down C and pull out all 9 bars, because we discussed this already, we get 9-to-1 ratio. But what about the opposite, a 1-to-9 ratio? I'm going to pull out 1 bar and simulate with the pieces of paper jammed in the keys, each key as it corresponds to the drawbar. Now, I said that only the 3rd bar from the left, or the 8-foot bar, represents the actual middle C as we play it. So that's the first one we'll put down. Now stay there. Good dog. Sit, Ubu, sit. That's the 3rd bar. The 1st bar, I'm going to go back and drop an octave to here. Come on, get in there. Make a fool out of me. There we go. The 2nd bar, if you recall, is above the 3rd bar by a 5th. It's the G up here. There we go. Da-da. Then the 4th bar is going to be this C an octave above the one we first put down, middle C. Right? That's the 4th bar. The 5th bar is an octave plus a 5th above. There we go. Do, sol. Then the next do, the 6th bar, is going to be the middle C 2 octaves up. Then the 7th bar is the E 2 octaves and a major 3rd up. Do, mi, mi. Then the 5th, the 8th bar, there you go. That's drawbar theory in a nutshell. Ah, boy, I went to all the trouble to fold these just to show you that, and my demonstration only lasted about 2 minutes. Let's show you a 9-to-1 over a 1-to-9. Upper keyboard, 9 slips of paper for 1 drawbar. Now this is the opposite, 9 bars out to 1 key, 1-to-9, 9-to-1. All right. That's about as clear as I can make it without beating a dead horse. Now make like a grizzly and bear in mind. Not that you could fit an entire bear in your mind, but I digress. A Hammond organ stops, or in this case, drawbars. Drawbars imitate or replace pipe organ stops. That's what they're supposed to replicate. On a Hammond organ, it's roots, fifths, and 1 major 3rd. Bear in mind that on a pipe organ, a traditional cathedral pipe organ, there's many more stops. Some stops are a minor 7th, other stops are a 9th. There's stops that address quartal settings that involve 4ths, 11ths, 13ths. They're all over the board. So a pipe organ can actually produce many more tones and overtones because it has the advantage of so many more stops that represent so many more scale degrees. But the Hammond organ does quite a bit with just roots, fifths, and a major 3rd. Percussion. The percussion is the plunking tone that comes in over the organ when you press the percussion to on. They come in 2 different flavors. Second harmonic percussion, which is when the light is off, and 3rd harmonic percussion when the light is turned on. Okay, first let's go back and pull out our 8-foot drawbar that you're so familiar with as fundamental now. and play middle C. And there it is. Grab my piece of paper to hold down middle C. And now, that was the plunk borrowed from the 4th drawbar, or the 4-foot bar 1 octave above the 8th, or what we're holding down right now. If we set this to 3rd, it's the 5th drawbar from the left that does the sounding. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, do, sol. So 2nd harmonic percussion borrows from the 4th, or the 4th drawbar from the left, or 4-foot bar. And then the 3rd harmonic percussion borrows from the 5th drawbar from the left. As you recall, or you might recall from my spreadsheet discussion, these were labeled 2nd and 3rd harmonic, respectively. So that's where 2nd and 3rd harmonic get their name here. One more thing about it that I'd like to discuss. We got that piece of paper on middle C and we pull out the 1-foot drawbar. Remember, that's 1, 2, 3 octaves above middle C. If I turn on the percussion, percussion kills the 1-foot drawbar, because on a real Hammond organ, or I should say a vintage Hammond organ, the 1-foot bar is the point-to-point wiring tone that the percussion circuit borrows in order to give us this and this. It has to rob from one of them, rob Peter to pay Paul. As soon as I turn the percussion off, this is sounding again, and I'll push it in and take our little slip of paper out. That's percussion on the Hammond B3. Now that we've seen drawbar theory in action, the next thing I'd like to do is show you some settings and some strategies for playing music in a band situation. We don't play with all the bars out all the time. A Hammond organ is designed to have many gradations between 0 and 8 that we're going to address next. The main thing is there are times where less is more and you want to stay out of other people's way. And then there's your turn to shine, and then you want to bring things up accordingly. But you have to be ready for it and know how to adjust these drawbars. When I'm just trying to chord comp, which means back up a singer or another instrumentalist with chords, the general rule is 1st drawbar and 3rd, your 16-foot and your 8-foot, your tonic and your octave below tonic, or root. Let's say we're just doing some simple passage where we're going 5, 4, 1 in C. So G, F, C. And we're in the middle of a verse and we don't want to get in the singer's way. Then maybe it's time to go to a chorus, and I want to get a little bit more pronounced. I'll bring out my highs just a little bit more. Then maybe it's my turn to shine with a solo. In that case, I'll maybe pull all of them out and go for broke. just meandering. I would make up the solo however I wanted that fit the situation at the time. But then my solo is over. Time to quick cut these back out and go back to keeping it quiet for the singer or for the next instrumentalist to take his solo. A couple of settings that I can think of that are interesting or basic are the first 4 drawbars out is a basic rock setting. First 3 out with third harmonic percussion would be the Jimmy Smith jazz sound. Maybe not quite that loud. Maybe you're more into that high twizzly. There's a place where highs would be more appropriate. You could be much more subtle than that. Mainly keep the lows out. The possibilities are endless. If you want all even drawbars, all the full numbered drawbars, that's kind of gives you more of a churchy sound. And then put the chorus on, and or heaven forbid the vibrato, V1. Actually sounds more like garage band mid-60s sort of organ. That would be all the even harmonics out. What if I pulled out all the odd harmonics, the mixed fraction harmonics? It's detuned so that none of the roots are exposed or being played. So if I play with a C in the bass and play a C up top, I've got more G's being played from here, here, and here, and an E coming from here than I do. It doesn't sound tonally centered. If I go C, F, G and play C, F, G chord, it sounds really off because you have your fifths dominating your roots. You have to be careful about that, that fifths don't dominate the roots or over-dominate. Now it seems to make more sense. But the general idea and just I want to give you with this is you have 9 combinations if you count 1 through 8 plus all the way in being 0, no sound at all. Let's say that's a 9th choice. So you have 9 times 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 9. It's 9 to the 9th power. That's how many choices you have, individual combinations at different gradations. Of course, we don't count all 9 zeros because that's silence, but that gives you an idea that there's a lot going on. So in conclusion, I want to say that that wasn't the most down, dirty, and quick explanation of drawbar theory, but hopefully it was somewhat thorough, somewhat entertaining, maybe got something out of it, and next time you see these things or you want to play the Hammond organ or learn it, it makes a little bit more sense. And my goal, like I said at the very beginning, was to demystify what these things mean, and hopefully, as intimidating as they might seem across the board, once you learn you're really only working with 9 at a time, it's actually not as insurmountable as you might think. I'm John O'Flaherty, the B3 Burner, and I'll see you next time.